Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at CMMSradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. Thanks for tuning in. We are here at Brightly Illuminate in Raleigh, North Carolina. At Brightly Illuminate, we are bringing the best ideas to light. We have a couple of special guests joining us. We're going to learn all about Woolpert, and they actually are one of the event exhibitors and sponsors. We're joined by Ryan Butler and David Sturtz. Ryan, go ahead and say hello.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you having us.
It's a pleasure. And David.
Good afternoon. Good to be here.
I'm really glad you guys made time to join me. So first and foremost, for you, David, I would like to learn exactly how you got into the industry, how that all really started, and bring us up to today, present day, and what you really do.
Well, as an 8-year-old boy, I used to dream about being a long-range facility planner for K-12 schools, and it just happened that way. Or not actually, and not at all. Not a straight path, as most people around here, you looking for something to do, ended up starting a small business out of grad school, and ran that for a while in tutoring, and then knew a guy who ran a business doing K-12 capital planning. I did one-on-one tutoring. He did major bond programs, opposite sides of the coin in K-12. And we used to talk shop over coffee for years, and he had an opening, and it was time for me to put that thing away and move on. So it just happened that way, and that was 2012. And since then have had it's been a real opportunity to work across the country and work about 50 different communities and see common challenges in capital planning and how that dovetails into their core mission, and how teetering and working on the back end a little bit and the planning side can help with your core mission and help kids. So
and at the end of the day, that's what it's really all about. But how does that fold into this idea of CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, and how you work with Brightly and Brightly users?
So just keeping it simple, that every entity, public entity, private, and every household, you got your budget, you got your revenue and expenses. And for a school district, for a public entity, most of your expenses are going into your people. Vast majority of your expenses, $8 to $9 out of 10. And how your facilities are distributed around your geography, how they're configured, what condition they're in, really sets how you can divide up your operational dollars. How you can divide up your operational dollars determines how you can invest in your core mission. So it really trying to keep it simple, and that's what we're presenting on, is integrated portfolio management. What we talk about is, look, agencies, public agencies in particular, are really good about adding assets as they're growing. But over time, less good on the whole about keeping them up to snuff, because buildings don't come to advocate for themselves in board meetings. And then as populations dwindle, revenues dwindle relative to those populations, it's a lot harder to get out of fixed assets than it is to add fixed assets. And so many of the clients that we're working at are at a pivot point where their buildings are kind of an albatross around their neck in some ways, mixing metaphors there, but looking at how do you then take a comprehensive view of, all right, how do we use a capital investment strategy to actually make your portfolio more efficient while still being accessible to all of your stakeholders, so that you can get back to being in a healthy expense to revenue ratio, so that you can then invest in your core mission on a sustainable fashion.
So, and now I want to bring this back over to Ryan. So when we're doing that, is a lot of this, so we get these buildings that become essentially an albatross, and you're never going to escape it. How does that tie into the degradation of infrastructure and how assets are generally, a lot of them we see are beyond their useful life already, and they're still out there? Is that a big factor when it comes to what we were just talking about with David?
Yeah, absolutely. And to add on to what David said there, it's definitely just not the facility assets either, right? So we deal with many variety of organizations throughout the country. So you could take the example of facilities and move it over to public utilities, public works departments, parks and recreation, right? They're all facing the same challenges, right? That David just went through in the facilities. So assets that are beyond its life cycle that need to be replaced, right? And it doesn't matter what the industry is. We're seeing it everywhere, right? So organizations have a budget that's limited, right? And the biggest question they're trying to answer is, where is the best place to spend this money to get the best tax dollars or the best dollars being spent towards their assets? So it doesn't really matter the industry. We're seeing it everywhere, right? So everything that David just mentioned there is the same thing on every other public side that we're working with as well, right?
So I'll bring this back to David. What are you seeing as the biggest barrier to affect a change to these current scenarios, aside from just the obvious money and revenue? But are there other factors that a lot of us may or may not know about that are at play, like this lack of skilled labor, lack of visibility into the health of these assets, things like that? What is it?
I mean, honestly, it's fear. It's fear that any kind of change in strategy will be more painful than the present. And a lack of awareness of the pain point of the present. So very often you'll see, well, we just don't have enough money to pay our for example, in K-12, to keep our teachers' pay. We're losing teachers. There's a national teacher shortage. We need to be able to retain our teachers and pay our teachers. Well, I work with clients like, we just can't keep up with the teacher pay. Well, you've been losing 500 students a year for 10 years. You have the same fixed assets as you did before. I didn't teach calculus, but I can pretty much tell you that that's pretty basic math. Your fixed assets are the same. Your revenue is going down. We can't keep up with those expenditures per capita when you're in that situation. And so very often people will find a variety of ways to explain why the status quo is not working that don't involve the fixed assets being the problem. They don't see it because it's the air you breathe. You don't really see that connection. And so what we try to do is to say, look, the reason you're in this situation right now is that you have had fixed expenses with declining revenues. And the way you get out of it is you align your portfolio of inventory, be it any kind of capital inventory, as Ryan was saying, to your need. And it's like a triangle. You got your demand and your population on one side, you've got your revenue, and you've got your fixed expenses, and you got to figure out what's the right ratio of all three of those. And very often it's not what you are currently doing.
So, and also on that side as well, so from a technology perspective, one of the things that we are coming across there's so many data silos throughout everywhere, right? And those data silos are really hurting organizations make decisions. So they know, organizations understand and believe that they do not have the resources to meet the needs. Justifying that becomes a whole nother challenge, right? You can't go in and say, well, we don't have enough staff to do this. Okay, show me where you don't. Well, we're just kind of feeling that way, right? So they need to be able to make data-driven decisions, and having these data silos out here is a problem, right? So for example, if you're going out and you need to dig up a water main in a street, right? and systems aren't talking together, you could very well be digging up a water main in a street that the public service department is going to tear up in 6 months to repave the street in the first place, right? And if you don't have those systems talking to each other, you're wasting a ton of money by not having systems that communicate with each other. So we see data silos across the organization of all sizes.
So this old adage that organizations of essentially any type, but let's say sizable with heavy infrastructure and responsibility, this concept of the left hand has no idea what the right hand is doing, or let's say thinking, if hands think, and these data silos create not only blind spots, but extreme vulnerability.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is where technology, along with what you guys do for clients, can get them towards that path, but then this fear gets in the way because they can't buy in. So what do you guys do to deal with the speaking the language of everyone involved at that organization to get on board with that vision to make that effective, impactful change?
So from my side, the clients who are most successful are those that have a vision from the top down, right, from an organization. It's very difficult to build that buy-in from the bottom up. That, good leadership, which funnels down to the staff, really understand that, right? So as an example, we went to one client, and it was a utility client, right, in a medium-sized city, and we were giving them training, and they were explaining to us the importance of cleaning and jetting utility lines that they have across the country. So this is someone who's out in the field on a daily basis explaining to us why their job is important to the citizens of the city, right? So that just shows, that top-down approach has really been communicated well there, and that's really the key to successful projects, right? And one of the things that we do is we go in and we evaluate all these numerous data silos and systems that they have, right, and really try to consolidate that as much as possible and talking with that, right? So those data silos, Excel spreadsheets and access databases and 8 different work order systems, right, that don't talk to each other, and consolidate those down so that those systems work the best to make the best decisions for the citizens of that city or county, which in the end of the day is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, so you talked about something there, and I want to kick this over to David. When it comes to this data, even if you can get it, how common is it that the existing data is, at least partially, the wrong data in the first place?
Almost always. Because when it is siloed, you're making global decisions based on very tactical factors, right, and not seeing the whole. And so it's what we want to do is start with just asking the basic questions. What are all your pain points? What are your goals? Like he was saying, like if you don't have a vision, we better get that square pretty quick. Where's the ship heading? Why? What's your core mission, if anything else? And quite honestly, 80% of every organization's core mission is pretty dang similar. But it's focusing on that. There's no new problem under the sun. It's all humans learning to work together towards a common goal, without mucking it up too bad in the process. Like that's where in anything, family life, in business life, in this world, it's like try to simplify the things because we can get so lost in the thousands of tactical decisions that have to be made. You have to rise above that and go, what's the strategic vision? What are the key drivers on this numerator of cost and denominator of budget? Like, I want to get down to very simple understanding about what's upside down where, and then what are the options to write that ratio. And try to and be hyper simple. There's 1,000 complexities that we have to work to get that, but we have to communicate it to the politicals and to the community, and quite frankly, to ourselves and those making decisions, and try to keep simple strategic decisions being the focus of the conversation. We'll do the detailed stuff on the back end, but we need to keep it simple.
I think when you talk about that concept of keeping it simple, one of the things that I was curious about is, as you were talking about it, is organizations, communities, et cetera, they tend to be either overly complicated in how they're trying to execute, or they haven't included that necessary complexity into the simplification of their, let's say, roadmap or plan, and they really need to be like right in the middle. That seems like a really common challenge because they don't know what's really happening.
You can be too simple, and what we see often is, you'll go to any kind of commissioner meeting, a board meeting, and 6 angry people can change the direction of a $500 million organization, right?
Yeah.
Because they're the voice in the room. It's a siloed voice, as Ryan was saying. It's not a strategic, comprehensive picture, but it's the voice in the room. And so what we try to do is make data be the voice, like a comprehensive data picture be the dominant voice in the room. And if you're going to make a decision, you have to dialogue with this picture that we're painting of the whole need. Come up with a different outcome if you wish, but you have to go through the data.
So with data, at the end of the day, is it fair for me to say that data is just like evidence, and we kind of tend to agree that evidence doesn't lie, and that's why it's so critical, but then on top of that, they've got faulty digitization of everything because it's siloed or it's inadequate here and there. There's 8 different places we need to get the data, and 2 of them are inefficient. So this is just going to be an ongoing problem. And then on top of that, we've got the cultural variance within organizations where some people don't know why we're doing what we're doing, and they're not on board. So overall, the data is critical, but it's going to boil down to the people.
It is, and at the end of the day, we need to make data-driven decisions, right? To best support our communities. Another challenge that we're seeing is with the retirement of staff, right? And the knowledge that they've had working there for the past 20, 30, 40 years, when they retire, that knowledge is going out right out the door, right? It's leaving the door. So we're seeing in the retirements happening today in the retirement workforce, that knowledge is going out the door. So, no longer it's, well, where is this asset located? It's under the ground. Oh, go ask Bob at the end of the street. I think he saw it last year, and he knows where it is, right? And that's just, it's not going to cut it. And not having that knowledge. So what we're really working with clients on is, before all those people are gone, right? Let's implement these systems. Let's get the data in there, right? Document it so that we can make decisions in the future, and we're not missing pieces of critical data that walked out the door with retirement. So staffing, whether it's hiring new staff or retirements, is always going to be a big challenge, to working with these organizations.
So one thing I want to do before we wrap up is I want to give the same question to both of you based on what you just said. So the question is this: if a lot of our skilled trades, the people with the knowledge, the tribal knowledge, all of it, however you want to refer to that, they're moving off, they're riding off into the sunset, and when it comes to curating, yes, we need the data, we need that done before they leave, but what do you both think of this idea that they should do something additional to curate their actual knowledge of their job, such as documenting their job not with just data, but anecdotal and informative stories and narratives? Is that a necessary component before they head out?
I mean, yes. You need the data to make a data-driven decision, and I agree with that 100%. That's our job description. It's necessary. It's not sufficient. Data without a story is a fact without an end point, right? You need the story. And the story goes back to the vision. Where are you going? What are your values? Why does this matter? I've had clients where I have taken pictures of chipped asbestos paint where kids are running around, and it doesn't change. Why? The story didn't get out. The fact was there, but there wasn't the story wasn't told about how that was, why that was such a problem. You would think it'd be self-evident, right? It's a powerful fact. It's a powerful image, but it wasn't being told. The story, the fact point was there in a spreadsheet. The story wasn't being told about the core mission and the impact. And you just reproduce that in any end of industry. We need both. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so that reminds me. So I was with a client one time, and we were going through their CMMS system, and they pulled up an event. It was something like a water main break or something like that affected, boil advisories and everything else. So to David's point of telling a story there, they wanted to get to the point where they opened up that activity, right? And that activity would tell the story, right? So they wanted to be able to see, pictures and records and, where they contact, and they wanted that record to tell a story, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that they wanted to see. And then, as a second part of this, answer, I, as part of every one of our projects, yes, it's always about the data and it's about the technology, but we go into projects no matter what CMMS system is picked, doesn't matter, and we're looking at their business processes, right, from the very beginning. And, some places have them, the majority probably don't. They have them, they're all up in their head. But they've never put them on pen and paper, flow charts, anything like that. So that's something that we do as well, right?
Yeah.
So then when we start to learn about these organizations, we understand how they're operating, right? And we say, well, why are you doing it this way, right? Well, the answer 7 times out of 10 is, well, we've always done it that way, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we're working with them to improve their processes regardless of the technology, right? Because it doesn't matter what CMMS system we're implementing, we're coming in with our best practices from a workflow perspective, right? And those are key, right? To have those documented, this is how we do things in this instance or not instance. So those would be the 2 ways I would describe it.
All right, and the one thing I want as kind of a wrapping point is we hear so common, and we're going to always hear, we've always done it that way. And if you want to change that, I'm going to ask Ryan and David each to let us know how you could reach out to either of them to improve your journey and get away from, we've always done it this way.
Well, appreciate that. So both at Woolpert here. It's just david.sturtz, S-T-U-R-T-Z at Woolpert. Feel free to reach out. Cell phone, 614-535-7615. I don't mind putting that out there. So just go ahead and reach out. Happy to talk further.
Awesome.
Yeah, so for my side, Ryan Butler, also with Woolpert, ryan.butler at woolpert.com. Since David gave out his phone number, I'll give out mine, 614-506-1121. And one of the things that we do at Woolpert, so David and I both work in a group called the Strategic Consulting Sector, which has 2 different markets, advisory services and technology services, right? So we work on anything from large-scale asset management planning for large organizations to the technology services side where we're implementing CMMS software solutions, right? Esri solutions, asset management solutions, right? So that's what we do on the technology services side at Woolpert. So, if there's any questions or, how do you get started, it's reach out and let's have a conversation, right? Because that's always a good place to start.
Beautiful. Gentlemen, I really appreciate you spending this time. I hope the remainder of the Brightly Illuminate event is phenomenal for you. I know you're here helping a lot of people. When we do get this content out, hopefully you'll be able to help even more. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.